Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's session, we are going to implement the update operation in our Spring Boot application with MySQL. Now we are going to write the repository code for our update operation. Inside the repository, I have created a method called putData which takes an employee object as input. In this method, we are writing our SQL update query. The query updates the field's first name, last name, email, phone number, and salary in the employees table, based on the matching employee ID. After that, we are calling jdbctemplate.update to execute this query. For each placeholder in the query, we pass the values from our employee object, getFirst_name, getLast_name, getEmail, getPhone_number, getSalary, and finally getEmployee_ID. Now let's move on to the service layer. In the service class, I have created a method called putData which takes an employee object as input. Inside this method, we are simply calling the repository's putData method and passing the employee object to it. This means the service layer acts like a middle layer between our controller and repository. Whenever the controller calls this method, the service layer forwards the request to the repository, where the actual update query is written. By keeping this separation, our application becomes more structured and easier to maintain. So, the service layer here is responsible for handling the business logic and delegating the database update to the repository. Now let's move on to the controller layer, where we expose our API for the update operation. Here, I have created a method with the @put_mapping annotation, and the endpoint is /update_employee_data. This means whenever we make a put request to this URL, this method will be executed. Inside the method, we are receiving the updated employee details in the request body as an employee object. Then, we call the service layer's putData method and store the result. If the result is greater than 0, that means the update was successful, so we return a response with the message employee data updated successfully. Otherwise, if something goes wrong, we return an error response with status code 500 and the message something went wrong while updating employee data. Now that we have completed writing our repository, service, and controller code for the update operation, it's time to build and run our project. First, I will clean and build the project to make sure there are no errors in the code. Once the build is successful, I will run the Spring Boot application. When the project starts, Spring Boot will automatically configure the application, connect with the MySQL database, and deploy our APIs on the default port, which is 8080. Now our backend server is up and running, and we can move ahead to test the update API using Postman. One important thing to remember when working with Spring Boot is that we cannot run the application 2 times at once on the same port. If we try to start the project again while the previous instance is still running, it will give us an error because the port is already in use. So before running the application again, we should first stop the last running application and then start it fresh. This way, our server will start properly without any conflicts. Now when we test our update API, we are getting the error message something went wrong while updating employee data. This means our code is running, but the update query is not working as expected. Usually, this kind of issue happens if the employee_ID does not exist in the database, or if there is some mismatch in the field values we are passing. To solve this, the first step is to check whether the employee ID we are trying to update is already present in the database. If not, then the query won't update any rows, and we'll get this error. While running our application, we encountered a syntax error. This usually happens if there's a small mistake in the code, such as a missing comma, semicolon, or incorrect query syntax. Let's carefully check our code and identify the issue. Once we find the syntax error, we will correct it. After fixing the syntax, we can build and run the application again. This ensures that our code compiles correctly, and the update operation will work without any issues. After sending the put request with the updated employee details, we received the response employee data updated successfully. This confirms that our repository, service, and controller layers are working perfectly together. So that's it for today's session. We successfully implemented the update operation in our Spring Boot application with MySQL. To summarize, we wrote the repository code to execute the SQL update query. We created the service layer to handle the business logic and call the repository method. We exposed the update functionality via the controller using a put API endpoint. We built and ran the project, tested the API using Postman, and verified the changes in the MySQL database. With this, we now have a complete flow for updating employee data in our application. Thank you for watching, and in the next session, we'll explore more CRUD operations to make our application fully functional.